It's Thursday and time for Worldview with Denis Campbell. Denis is editor-in-chief of UK Progressive Magazine, also author of the book Billionaire Boys Election Freak Show. Denis, you're coming to us today with what could be a huge, huge story. We've been covering potential election fraud and irregularities for quite some time now. We recently had the story linking Tag Romney to some of the voting machines in Ohio. But now you're in touch with a former NSA agent who believes he has uncovered actual election fraud on behalf of the Romney campaign. Tell us about it.
Well, it's not just the Romney campaign, it's the GOP in general. Now, a little bit of background in history. I have been writing stories about election fraud in Arizona since 2006. There was a bond issue election there that had some very funny numbers, and I got in touch with a group of people down there who have been trying now for the better part of 6 years to construct an actual paper trail so they can see what happened in this particular election. Their work in this regard has been going on for 6 years just in that. The gentleman who I am associated with is a former NSA analyst. His name is Michael Donahoe. Now, Michael and I have had a relationship, a friendship for almost 17 years. We were neighbors when we lived back in Maryland in the United States many years ago. So I've known him for quite some time. He's a very soft-spoken, understated sort of gentleman, and a true analyst in every sense of the word. He was sent a link by somebody to a report. This report is by a gentleman by the name of Chaga. Let me just get his first name. Francois Chaga and James Johnson. Now, what happened is that Francois was looking at election results, and an election observer during the South Carolina primary made an observation. It said, gee, the number of voters for Romney is showing an uncharacteristically high rate of return. And that was questioning and questionable. So Chaga and Johnson are a couple of analysts. They went back and they looked at all of the votes that have been tabulated in that particular state. And they saw a shocking sort of correlation between the size of the precinct. So the larger the precinct, the more votes tended to go up for Romney and down for everybody else.
So let's stop right there for a second.
Yep.
Let's play devil's advocate as we go here. Is it not possible, based on, we're going to go piece by piece, but based on what you've just said, is it not possible there is something about Romney voters that in more populated counties tends to direct them to Mitt Romney instead of the other Republican candidates? Is that not a possibility?
That's a very good question, and that's one of the first places doing their analyst job that they went to and they looked. They wanted to find out what was causing this deviation, because if you are having a similar result in your medium-sized counties, then the numbers should stay relatively flat all the way through. You shouldn't be seeing, as the county gets bigger, the numbers changing, because obviously if you put it, and the statistical variance was anywhere between 8 and 10%, meaning a 20% swing either way for Romney. And that was something that was quite puzzling to them. They went back and they looked at all 50 states in the primaries, and this information is something that everybody can get directly from their Secretary of State. You can get the raw vote totals by precinct in every one of the 50 states. So they went in and they gathered all that data and they put it into an Excel spreadsheet where they listed each of the precincts in numerical order, the vote count, and the candidates. Then what they did was they put in a set of columns to the side so that they could then figure out, okay, let's sort these from highest to lowest so that we would have, those that only have a few number of votes in a precinct, they would appear at the top all the way down to those at the bottom. And then they used a calculation to see what the statistical variance was. And what we saw was what I mentioned before, that the bigger the precinct, what was happening was the number of votes for Romney and the percentage was rising. And we saw, particularly in Arizona, which is where Michael Donahoe is concerned, that the vote totals for Santorum and Ron Paul correspondingly went down.
So let's be totally clear here on what we mean by bigger precincts. Are we talking about physical size, total population, or what are we talking about?
Physical size. So, the larger the precinct, the way this works, the larger the precinct is, the easier it is to hide anything that's going on like that.
Okay, so
whereas
again,
if you're in a very, very
precincts,
small precinct, then
so
Dennis, a
I want to
10% variance, it could be significant and could be found out.
And you're saying a bigger precinct is one that has more voters?
More votes cast.
More votes cast. Okay, so that makes sense
because
because
it's all totally based on the raw vote cast totals that they're able to get directly from the Secretary of State.
So this really throws out the idea that it's a density thing, meaning in more urban, densely populated areas, Mitt Romney is more attractive because we're simply talking about the total number of votes cast, not more densely populated precincts, but simply the precincts with more people in them.
Again, these guys are analysts. This is their job. When something doesn't make sense, they start to dig deeper into the data to see if they can find an answer. And when you're looking at, something such as the percentage, it should remain constant throughout. But when you see a widely divergent change, that's when things start to get very interesting. And the reason for, and apparently they've gone back now and they've looked at not just primaries, but they've looked at general elections, they've looked at gubernatorial elections, senatorial elections, and what they've found that if there was a difference of 10% or more, there was no way that this fix that was put in there was going to affect it one way or the other. So if you look at somebody like Jan Brewer, for example, she won by a very small percentage. This would have had an impact on it. Whereas if you look at President Obama with his 9 million vote total and huge victory in 2008, no fix would have changed it. In fact, the only thing it would have done is would have reduced his overall final tally and number of votes.
Are there any states where this pattern is not there, and what can we deduce from that?
No, the pattern is so consistent that it suggests that it would have had to have happened at a central office level. So indeed, it could very well be that one person in each of these 5 companies would set this 10% number or whatever it is in place so that the computer automatically reads and screens out whatever it needs to do to raise the total of one and lower the total of another. There's an old film out there called Hacking Democracy, and there's a thing called the Hursty hack. I highly recommend to your viewers that they take a look at it because it shows how simple it is to at the memory card level, to take these voting machines and manipulate, as well as at the central tabulation level. This suggests that this is at an even higher level and then brings into question all of the investments and such that you were talking about yesterday.
So we have to ask the question, if this is so wide-ranging, why don't we have way more information pointing to whoever it is that are the culprits here? And who are the culprits here? What is the accusation?
That's the question. We don't know, but we do know, what we do know is that it only seems to be positively affecting Republican candidates. So, for example, if you look at Gabriella Giffords' 2010 election, which is what Michael did in his analysis, he saw that, in fact, instead of her winning by a razor-thin less than 1%, because the votes were divergent, her total went down as the Republican challenger Kelly went up. You saw that, she should have actually won by somewhere around about 19 or 20%. So it's significant numbers. John McCain was not affected because he was outside that 10% margin of manipulation. Anything more than that would raise red flags. The whole idea behind this is to leave a mask sort of behind yourself. But again, I encourage people to go to UK Progressive Magazine, take a look at the article, more importantly, look at the report from Choquette and Johnson, because that shows you how they did it and do exactly what Mickey did. And I've actually got Mickey's spreadsheet in the report that they can download, and they can actually see the numbers. So all they have to do is replace precinct numbers with their own precinct numbers, candidates and votes, and see if it does that. I pretty much guarantee that it is going to, and it's going to show, again, that there's this huge statistical variance where there shouldn't be one.
Okay, I encourage people to head over to UK Progressive, check it out. We'll see what the reaction is to this. We'll see how far this goes and what the potential effects in the presidential election are. We've been speaking with Denis Campbell, who's the editor-in-chief of UK Progressive Magazine. Denis, thanks as always.
Thank you.